if you have a partner who's trying to do something as challenging as quitting drinking, if they are an alcoholic, the best thing that you could do for them is to support them and get them the help they need, but also to do it with them.
The first 6 months, it's not drinking takes up more brain space than actually drinking.
Our ability as people who make drinks to start breaking the rules a little more and to start thinking outside the box a little more with the tools that we already have.
I can't believe how incredible the products have got on the market now. It isn't a sweet cocktail, a mocktail anymore. They're genuinely better than the real thing.
Non-alcoholic drinks can be an incredible part of your toolkit. They have been for us. They have been for hundreds and hundreds of people that I now know personally.
The fun starts creeping back in, and a year or two into it, you're like, this is the happiest and the best I've ever felt, and hell no to going back. Welcome back to The Upward Spiral, the podcast where we explore the transformational power of intentional living, all starting with rethinking your relationship with alcohol. I'm your host, Michelle O'Brien, and I am thrilled that you are here. In each episode, we delve into inspiring stories, practical strategies, and the vibrant alcohol-free culture to help you unlock your true potential and live your best life. This episode is for anyone who has questioned their drinking habits, felt maybe a little bit curious about mindful drinking, or simply wants to create more space for growth and joy. I'm your guide on this journey because, just like you, I have navigated the ups and downs of redefining my own relationship with alcohol. A few years ago, I decided to ditch my grey area drinking to embrace an alcohol-free lifestyle. And the results, honestly, have been nothing short of transformational. Today, we have got a fascinating guest. He is a former sommelier who worked at one of the most prestigious restaurants in the world, the French Laundry. He has now co-founded a company that is revolutionizing the alcohol-free drink scene with its exquisite handcrafted bitters. He has an incredible energy and passion for helping people create more mindful drinking experience. Please welcome the incredibly talented and inspiring Ian Blessing.
Thank you, Michelle.
I'm so excited to have you on the show. How are you this evening?
I'm fantastic. I'm thrilled to be chatting with you and grateful to be here.
Oh, amazing. I always do this in the mornings and you're in the evenings. And so I'm going to say hello from the future. It is sunny and warm on Thursday, the 10th of October.
It is. It's still warm here on the 9th of October here on Wednesday. It's almost the middle of October and it's still 90 degrees here. It's wild.
Wow, it's crazy.
Yeah.
I have to say, like, living in Asia and living in Singapore, where we're in forever summer, I miss autumn or fall. It's the one season that, like, my body craves and I get ready for, and I really, really miss.
Yeah, we get proper seasons here, but it's the summer has been getting longer and longer and warmer and warmer, and it gets up to 110. We're in Chico, California, in Northern California, and it's about 4 hours inland, so it gets pretty warm. It's not uncommon to have 110, 115 degree days. So I love this time of year because it's a nice relief from the intense heat, but we're still not quite there yet. Hopefully, a couple weeks and we'll be squarely in autumn.
Nice. I've been 10 years in Asia, and I still miss it. So I'm just about to, as soon as I get off this call, put the Halloween decorations up, which my kids are very excited about. Right. So let's get into it. I would really want to talk about your journey from Napa Valley to alcohol-free. So from what I understand, and I'm hoping you'll tell me more, is your journey into the world of alcohol-free beverages is actually very unique because you started out as a sommelier. Can you take us back to the days of the fine dining scene and the time that you were at the French Laundry and what that experience was like.
Yeah, my wife and I met at the French Laundry. We both worked together as somms. So I actually Carly was a back server when I started as a food runner, and she trained me. And I was terrified of her. To be fair, I was terrified of everybody. Everybody knew. I think I'm assuming any restaurant like the French Laundry is pretty scared of most of the team when you get started. I don't mean that in a bad way. That probably sounds bad. It's a healthy fear, if that makes sense. It's if it's not for you, it's not for you, and you'll see your way out. But it is a fear that kind of felt good. And I was terrified of her, along with everybody else. Ironically, ended up marrying her and having kids a couple of years later. Um, and that's where quitting drinking came in. I mean, so our lives revolved entirely around alcohol. Carly and I are both over drinkers. Um, we didn't just you know we worked in alcohol, we worked in hospitality, but we drank too much. Call it whatever you want to call it, alcoholism, whatever your word is. But we drank too much. It wasn't healthy. It was fine at the time. It didn't affect anything but our own health and our sleep. But we did well in work. We weren't losing. We I don't know. I know this isn't what you asked, but it's an interesting kind of idea, and maybe an interesting thing for people to hear who are struggling with drinking. I think that most people have heard the phrase or the idea that you don't have to have a rock bottom. Not everybody who's in recovery has a rock bottom. But that doesn't even mean that, like, you don't have a rock bottom and maybe your drinking problem wasn't so bad. Like, our drinking problem was absolutely horrific. We drank all day, all night, got off work, drank till 4 in the morning, woke up, probably still drunk the next morning, took a shower and went to work, but performed great at work, didn't lose friendships, didn't lose family, never got into trouble, didn't get arrested, didn't get anybody hurt. I had one DUI. That was not good, but I didn't hurt anybody. I didn't hurt myself. I got pulled over and I spent a night in jail, and that was it. I had I'm an alcoholic. I had a horrible drinking problem, but never had anything close to a rock bottom, and functioned pretty well. It wasn't until we had kids that we realized, oh yeah, we can't do this anymore. What was fine for me is absolutely not okay for a 5-month old. And I think we spent the first couple of months living in wine country and thinking, we can be cool parents. We can go down to the restaurant and have a couple margaritas, couple martinis, glass of wine, some caviar, some champagne, and walk home like pretty drunk, with a 4-month old, with a 5-month old. Completely irresponsible, and realized pretty quickly, kids don't care if you're hungover. Kids are going to wake up all night long. They're going to wake up at 5 in the morning. They don't care if you're still drunk. They don't care if you're hungover, and they need you. And it wasn't even a decision. It was like, as soon as we realized the depth of the issue, it wasn't a question. It was, okay, we quit this now. We go get help now. We can't continue to live like this with a child, with a family. And so that's hard for anybody to quit drinking. You're losing a lot. It's challenging to quit drinking. You often need a significant amount of help, but we lost not only the alcohol aspect, but we lost our, we didn't lose our career, but work. Alcohol was everything we did. It's what we did for work. It's what we did for fun. It's what we did for study, for play. All of our day was consumed by alcohol, whether just, drinking too much to drink too much, or studying, reading a book, going wine tasting, meeting winemakers in Napa, doing these really incredible things. It's all we did. So to then quit drinking and kind of lose all of that, is challenging. And we were incredibly fortunate to discover the non-alcoholic space that had really kind of expanded and took off, fortunately for us, right around the same time that we quit drinking, and to realize that we didn't have to give up all of that, that we could still enjoy a great beverage, we could still enjoy the ritual, the flavor, the story, sharing a drink with friends and loved ones, over dinner or happy hour. We didn't have to lose all of that. We could still enjoy that flavor without the alcohol, and that's what ultimately led us here.
Very, very, very similar story. I know we've spoke offline that our kids are the same age, and yeah, I obviously had breaks when I was pregnant, but then coming back after pregnancy, I was like, I'm going to start getting back into this, start getting my social life back. And you very quickly realize you just can't do it. Not when
Yeah,
you need to get up. And I interviewed somebody yesterday, and she was just saying that her kids were a little bit older when she stopped drinking, and they became aware of her drinking and asked her about it and said, we don't like it when you drink, we don't like it, changes you. And I think, we never got to that point. Our kids were younger when we stopped drinking, so they never had to see us in that
yeah,
state. But I think, at any age, it's, yeah, if there's a good enough one good reason to stop, it's doing
yeah,
it for your kids, right, for your
yeah.
family.
It's tough, and I don't mean to say that we quit when our kids were super young. I don't mean to say that in a negative way for anybody who might be listening, who is still drinking, who has older kids. It's
Yeah,
a disease. It's something that you have no control over at all. It's not something that you can just wake up one day and go, this is I'm drinking too much, I should stop. Like it's really really hard. Don't think that there weren't 100 times before that one day, pre-kids, before Jack was 5 months old. There were 100 times where I thought I should probably quit drinking. I think I have a problem. I should quit drinking. And we tried actively to quit drinking a number of times once we had realized that there was a problem. It's not it's a challenge. It's something that requires help.
yeah,
And if you're still stuck in that, don't I hope you don't beat yourself up for it, but it's never too late to make that change. But I also hope that people understand how challenging it is.
yeah. Did you guys work a program?
We did. We both started in AA. Didn't work for us on its own. We pretty quickly checked into rehab, both of us separately. We our both of our moms took Jack for a month, which was amazing. And again, I'm incredibly grateful that we had that opportunity, that we had family who could help us with that. And so they looked after Jack for a month, and we both checked into 4-week inpatient treatment. And honestly, I don't think that I could have done it without it. After a couple weeks of trying AA and trying to quit on my own, it became very obvious that I was never going to be able to do it without professional help. I would make it 3 days pretty consistently. And then after 3 days, I don't even remember what the triggers were. I don't even think they were triggers. I think it was just after 3 days, I said, you know what? Nah, this isn't going to work. I'll try to limit myself. I'll try, I'll have a glass, I'll have 2 glasses, I'll only drink with dinner. And it was obvious that was never going to work. And that the only thing that we could do was completely check out from our normal life. And I think a huge part of it is the fact that you're simply removing yourself from the ability to drink for 3 to 4 weeks. Um, I'm not a doctor, don't take this isn't medical advice, but there were parts of rehab that were very helpful in terms, group sessions, group therapy, talking to people about issues. A lot of that was incredibly helpful. A lot of that was really wonderful. But I think the biggest part of it is as simple as not being able to drink for 3 to 4 weeks, having detox, having medication that can help you get through that period. But simply the act of it being physically impossible to drink for 3 to 4 weeks, I think was the most important thing. Because once you get over that 3 to 4 week hump, it suddenly becomes much easier. I could not make it past 3 days because I was in the real world where I could walk down the street and go to the store and buy a bottle of wine. When you don't have that option, you're obviously not going to drink. And by the time you make it past that 3 to 4 week period, I think it becomes significantly easier. And that's not to say that you're going to get out and you're going to be cured. Of course not. But it made it possible to continue on where there's 0% chance that I could have done it without help. So, we got out and we did try to continue with AA, and it ended up not being for either one of us for different reasons. But we stuck with that for about 6 months and then kind of eventually found our own community again in the non-alc beverage space. Um, Ironically enough, and not everybody has this mentality, but there's a number of people in AA that will tell you in early sobriety or in any part of sobriety, unequivocally to stay away from non-alcoholic drinks, that they are triggering, that you will have one sip of non-alcoholic beer, and the next thing you know, you're face down in a ditch. And that's a wild thing to hear and to say to people, and drives me completely bonkers. I will not sugarcoat that. It drives me totally insane. If you take a moment, if you are in recovery, take a moment to think about it. Does the idea of a non-alcoholic beer, the idea of that taste, do you think that that's going to send you to the liquor store? If the answer is yes, then don't do it. But if the answer is either no or maybe, then give it a shot. And if you take a sip and you realize that it makes you want to go get a six pack, then dump it down the drain. You're fine. Don't reset your day count. I've seen people reset their day counts because they had a non-alcoholic beer. Think it through critically for yourself. Non-alcoholic drinks can be an incredible part of your toolkit. They have been for us. They have been for hundreds and hundreds of people that I now know personally all over the world who have used this as a tool. You're not going to use it to quit drinking. That's not it. You need more than that. But it's absolutely a tool. And to tell people that it will kill them, I think is doing a great disservice to people who could benefit by enjoying a drink that is completely unintoxicating and makes you feel like a human again, makes you feel included, makes you feel joy in a way that I hadn't felt in the 6 months prior to finding NA beverages. And this is why I say ironically, it ultimately ended up being my community and my replacement for AA. I wasn't working steps, but I realized that I didn't need to work steps for myself. What I needed was a community. I needed people that I could talk to. I needed people that I needed forums where I could talk about beer, except that beer was non-alcoholic. I needed to be able to go share reviews and answer questions and celebrate people's milestones or give people advice on what to drink that was not alcoholic. I found and I realized that I could be of service in helping people not drink in a polar opposite way from AA. And I don't want to tell anybody not to do AA. I'm never going to slam that organization. I think that if it works for you, that's fantastic, but it didn't work for me. And ironically, what did work was non-alcoholic beer.
It's amazing, and it's they were the bridge for me too. Now I wasn't dependent on alcohol at all. Like I was what you would kind of call a gray zone drinker. And if that, I was drinking a couple of drinks a week and maybe having one big blowout every 2 months. Towards the end, I wasn't drinking a lot. And I continued to drink because I felt that's what was expected of me, like culturally and socially. And that's what I needed in order to have a good time and have fun. And that was what I needed to connect. But I didn't want it. I didn't like how it was making me feel. But I continued to drink for connection. And this is just what blew my mind about the non-alcoholic alternatives, is like it gave me back that connection. So it allowed me to feel, like you just said, included. I was drinking something sophisticated, something that tasted great, something that was adult, but it allowed me to retain that connection that I thought I was going to lose in giving up alcohol. And I just couldn't believe like that was all I needed. And I can't believe how incredible the products have got on the market now, that it isn't a sweet cocktail, a mocktail anymore. They're genuinely better than the real thing. And it was just the bridge. It was exactly what I needed on the other end of the spectrum, maybe to yourself, who was kind of maybe drinking a bit more.
And that's, I think, what one of the most wonderful things about these drinks that didn't really exist, more than 6 years ago or so, is that they're for everybody. They're ironically, they're not for sober people. I mean, that is obviously a portion of the market, but the data that we have here, and it's been updated a couple times, and it's always like 93 to 94% of people who are drinking non-alc alternatives still drink alcohol. They are folks who are either moderating or trying to drink less, or maybe not even consciously trying to do any of those things, but just don't drink a lot.
Yeah.
There's a lot of people, and this sounds, like I had a hard time believing this because I, had 6 to 10 drinks a day. Most people don't drink like that. Most people have one drink a week, one drink a day. In the States, and I don't know how recent this is, but there was a Washington Post article from a while ago that said that 30% of America doesn't drink, 30% of America has one drink a week, which is wild. It's nothing. Another 30% or so has one drink a day. And then the last 10%, yeah, the last 10% consumes most of the country's alcohol and has, 70 something drinks a week. That's the category I was in. And I associated mostly with that 10%. So when I saw that, there's no way this is not true. There's no way this is true. This is made up. Now I realize that is the case, that most people don't drink the way that I did. Most people just don't drink a lot. And so let's say it's Tuesday night and you're having dinner and you want, a tasty drink to go with your meal, but you don't drink on Tuesday nights. You don't drink on Wednesday afternoon at lunch. Like I'm 3 beers deep. Most people like don't drink at lunch. They just want an iced tea or a water. So these options weren't available before, but now you can go to lunch and you can have a non-alcoholic beer that tastes great and is going to go better with your food than just a water or an iced tea might. So most of the people that are buying these products they're not problem drinkers, they're not gray area, even they're not even looking to moderate. They're just normal people who like tasty drinks.
Yeah.
That's it.
Yeah. Exactly. And it's just, I always put it out, it's like you just don't want to drink for that drink on that occasion. It doesn't
Correct.
have to be all
Yeah.
night, it's just that one drink.
But,
Do you think it helped going through everything with Carly? Do you think going into this together and doing it together has made it easier for you guys to stay sober?
100%. And that's another thing. I don't know. I don't think that either one of us would have been able to do it if both of us weren't doing it.
Mm.
I don't have any other experience besides, my partner also quitting at the same time. But I can imagine it would be really challenging to quit drinking if your partner was continuing to drink. Not that I mean, there's nothing necessarily wrong with that. Like I don't want to shame anybody that's in that situation, but if you have a partner who's trying to do something as challenging as quitting drinking if they are an alcoholic, the best thing that you could do for them is to support them and get them the help they need, but also to do it with them. And I don't know, maybe that sounds unfair to hear. Like, why do I have to quit drinking? I don't have a problem. It'd be really challenging if there was alcohol in the house. I'd probably drink it. Like, honestly, 100%. I'd probably drink it. And that's me. Everybody's different.
Yeah.
But that was, again, that was like, part of why rehab was so effective, is that it was making it unavailable. And then as soon as we got back home, we had 200 bottles of wine that I immediately gave away and sold, which was great. I made a bunch of money on all the wine that I'd stashed away, and I gave a lot of
Yeah.
it away, which was fun. But, it couldn't be in the house. If it was in the house, I was going to guarantee I would drink it. There's no way. The idea of drinking doesn't take up any of my brain space, which is incredibly liberating. And honestly, one of the reasons why it is the reason why AA didn't work out for me, is I spent so much time in active addiction thinking about alcohol. If I wasn't drinking, I was thinking about how quick it would be until I got off work and could go down the street and start drinking and drink all night. I was either drinking or thinking about drinking. So to quit drinking and go into AA and to spend so much time thinking about not drinking, meeting with sponsors, doing homework, going to meetings, all this stuff. And again, if that works for you, that's great. But I didn't like how much time I was focusing on not drinking. I wanted that time back to myself. And I'm delighted to share that for the last 4.5 years, I have had, I don't know, let's call it 6 hours of my day back, of my brain, my mental capacity. I've gotten all that time back to do with it whatever I want. And we launched a business 3 years ago, which I had wanted to do for, I don't know, 15, 20 years, but never got to, probably because I was drunk. Um, what we've been able to accomplish and do in the last few years, because we've been lifted of that burden, is incredible.
Yeah.
And so this is kind of a long rambling point, but I, I don't think about drinking. It's not a concern. But if there was a bottle of wine in the house, I'd probably drink it. Like,
Yeah.
honestly, like and that's just the way it is. Like, I am an addict. I am an alcoholic. And if there is a bottle of wine in front of me and nobody's going to know the difference, probably going to drink it. And that's
Yeah.
just being honest. So if you have a partner who is trying to quit drinking, if they are in active addiction, if they are an alcoholic, the best thing that you can do is be there with them.
I really love your point about it taking up brain space. So I was at a dinner party last night, and I always get loads of questions about it now, and I love it. I love kind of answering the questions because people are genuinely curious, about the difference it's made, like, in my life. And I keep saying everything in my life's leveled up. Like, I feel more alive. I feel more joy in everything. But it didn't happen straight away. The first 6 months, it's not drinking takes up more brain space than actually drinking, because you're sat there thinking, okay, am I going to drink today? Am I not going to drink today? I've got to go to this event. What's it going to look like? Who's going to be there? Are they going to pressure me? What types of drinks are they going to offer? Am I going to break it? And you're constantly like scenario planning through your head for everything, oh God, someone's just invited me somewhere, or I've got this wedding in 3 weeks' time. How am I going to navigate this? But eventually that all kind of goes away. More confident you become, more comfortable you become in your sobriety, that all goes away. And that brain space and that thinking space, like, yourself, it just opens up, and you have capacity to take more on, do more things, the things that you've always wanted to do. I always wanted to have a podcast, and
Here we are.
yeah, we are. But you also just find the joy starts creeping back in, the fun starts creeping back in, and a year or two into it, you're like, this is the happiest and the best I've ever felt, and hell no to going back to how it was
Yeah.
before. So I want to actually get into your incredible business as well. So what oh, actually, just before that, so what happened with work? If everything was around alcohol, what happened when you came out of rehab, and what did you do about work?
Well, so I went back to I went back to work. I went back to Opus One, and I I didn't have an issue being there at all. I still love hospitality. I love serving people. I love telling stories. So I was excited to get back, and I would still taste and I would spit. That wasn't an issue for me. Not everybody can do that. Obviously, lots of especially having just quit drinking, most people are probably not comfortable doing that. But professionally, I was able to disconnect those things. Ultimately, it didn't work out, and I actually left probably 5 months later, or so 4 or 5 months later. And I don't know why exactly. I think honestly, it's because that first 6 months after you quit drinking, like you said, is really hard. And I had like nervous breakdowns like every other day. Um, which again, if you're thinking about drinking, I'm sorry to like lay on the hard truths, but it is really, really hard in the first few months, and I was kind of flailing, and my boss would call me into his office because I was like out in the vineyard, like pacing back and forth because I like had to because I was like in the middle of I was about to have a meltdown. I was about to like have a panic attack for no reason. Like my job was great. I made a bunch of money. Like it was awesome. I loved the wine. I loved the people there. I loved everything about it. But I was having panic attacks, and I would like have to leave the floor, and I would just go walk into the vineyard, and I would just like walk around the vineyard. And my boss is like up in his office like watching me pace around the vineyard, like, are you okay? It's like, no. I'm sorry, I'm not. And it wasn't serving wine, it wasn't what we were doing. That didn't really have anything to do with it. It was just that I needed to change things. um I don't even really remember why, other than I just felt like I needed a change, and I ended up leaving a few months later, and was going to go back to working in restaurants, and I got a call the day that I was supposed to start working at the restaurant at Meadowood, the other three-star restaurant in Napa, uh, that they were closed because of COVID. That was the day that COVID started, and the GM called and said, "I think you're probably aware, but the restaurant's closed," and so didn't end up starting that job. And then ultimately had, God, I don't know, a year and a half off due to COVID and restaurants being closed, and there not being any work at all. I eventually decided to go to real estate school. I was going to get into real estate because that's what you do when you leave restaurants. You either go into the restaurant hierarchy. The ladder is like uh, you know, host, food runner, server, maybe busser in there somewhere, dishwasher. But ultimately, you go bartender, bar manager, back to bartender, and then real estate agent. That's pretty much how it goes. The other possible avenues are brand rep, distribution, um, and that's about it, and real estate agent. So that's what I ended up doing. But 3 days into real estate classes, I was like, nope, I just don't care about this at all. Um, and at the same time, we had started getting into non-alcoholic cocktails, and realized that even at the time, this is 3 or 4 years ago now, there were probably 50 or 60 different brands of non-alcoholic spirits. And Liars at the time, I was, made 16 different spirits. It was like this one brand makes 16 different non-alcoholic spirits. You can stock an entire bar with one brand, not even getting into everything else, one brand. you can stock an entire bar. But the one thing that was really missing from the marketplace were fully alcohol-free cocktail bitters. And depending on why you're not drinking, plenty of people are comfortable with a couple of dashes of Angostura or any other alcoholic bitter. It's the same as vanilla extract. It's not going to get you drunk. Technically, the drink could still be under 0.5% alcohol, but there's a lot of people who are not comfortable with using a couple of dashes of 45% alcohol. It's still the liquid itself is highly alcoholic. You absolutely can drink it. You're not supposed to, but that does not mean that you can, you can't. You pop the top off that bottle and pour it into a glass, and it drinks the same as anything else. Why would you do that? Bars are serving non-alcoholic drinks with Angostura. I don't understand why.
Yeah.
So I realized that the reason is because there wasn't a great option. There wasn't a great alternative to classically inspired, 0.0% bitters that were just as intense, worked the same way as the bitters that they're used to, that they're already using behind the bar. And so I after 3 days of real estate classes, I walked up to Carly and I said, I'm done with real estate classes and we're going to make non-alcoholic cocktail bitters. And she was watching the kids and she looked at me like I was crazy and said, okay. And I said, no, I'm serious. And, kind of went back to work. I don't know what I was done with classes. So I think, I don't know what happened, but the next day we like had the conversation again. I said, no, this is something that I actually really want to do. And she incredibly said yes and was supportive. And we started recipe development in our home kitchen that lasted about a year and about 100 different iterations of the three flavors that we started with, and then started producing uh, together in a commercial kitchen a year later. And we launched in January of 2022. It's been almost 3 years, and have now scaled up three times, from 150 square feet in a shared commercial kitchen to a slightly larger space in that kitchen, and now in 2,500 square feet of our own space, where we do all of our production in-house, shipping, bottling, labeling, stickering, the whole thing, all here. And in January, again, for the fourth and hopefully last time, we are moving into uh, a larger facility again that will have a bottle shop and tasting room attached to it, which I'm super excited about.
Oh
Yeah.
my God, amazing. I'm excited. I'm gonna come and visit.
Please do. I can't wait. I wanted to do something like this for years, and it didn't make it. There's so much going on with the business, with the core business of producing, cocktail bitters, and we've got a 3 and a 5-year-old, and all I want to do is go back to serving people. And this is a way to do that while staying in the same space and having it really be an extension of what we're doing right now,
Yeah,
and a way of having a physical space where we can share what we do with people, but also be able to share the rest of the non-alc world with them and do
yeah,
flights of, non-alcoholic wine, beer, spirits, cocktails, all that.
yeah,
The I think, kind of ironically, my previous my immediate previous job before this was managing the hospitality program at Opus One, the tasting room for one of the best wines in the world. And now a few years later, I get to open a tasting room where I'm going to serve non-alcoholic wine, beer, spirits, bitters, cocktails, and be able to share all of that with people who are just looking for an alternative and want to know what's
yeah.
good.
I love that so much. And it's just that element of community as well, right? It's like that bringing people together over a non-alcoholic drink and showing them that you can still have connection without the alcohol.
Yep.
So important. On your website, you talk about the alchemy behind each of these bitters, and I want to know a little bit more. I think there was also something about them almost being good for you. Is that right? Am I saying that right? Like,
Yeah, no,
yeah,
yes,
tell me
yeah.
more.
100%. Bitters have a really interesting history where in the 17 and 1800s, they were initially developed as a medicinal tonic. They weren't used in cocktails. They were taken daily for their digestive benefit. back then they were given, the term patent medicine. They were prescribed for hundreds of ailments that they didn't, everything, far-reaching, applications from jaundice to kidney dysfunction, liver disease, um, sexual dysfunction, all kinds of things, and were really touted as a cure-all, for a lot of stuff. Of course, they don't do 100 things. That's wild. But what bitter herbs and roots and those ingredients genuinely are good for is your gut. They are good for digestion. Bitter flavor, when our bodies taste bitter flavor, we have a reaction where we think that it's poison. Not selling my product very well, but bitter isn't necessarily, an inherently delicious flavor. And our bodies think that we need to start creating digestive juices and really getting our digestive system going to deal with whatever we just ate. There's a strong medicinal history in bitters, and they eventually, in the early 1800s, became known more for their use in cocktails. The word cocktail is defined as spirit, sugar, water, and bitters. So what we know today as an old fashioned was really one of the first cocktails. Now we call every drink a cocktail, but back then it was literally called a cocktail. That was the type of drink. There were cocktails, there were flips, there were, sours, there were different categories of drink, and cocktail was one of those drinks. And the defining characteristic was that it was a spirit forward drink with a couple dashes of bitters and a sugar cube. So bitters eventually became known more for their use in cocktails as the 1800s and 1900s rolled around. And now you find both. Now you find bitters that are made specifically for cocktails, that are flavored with any combination of spices, fruit, citrus, herbs, flowers, anything that makes it, taste good, and something you'd want to use in a cocktail. And then there's another category of digestive bitters that are made more in that style of the 1700s, that include ingredients like dandelion root, burdock root, milk thistle seed, yellow dock root, ginger, fennel, all these things that are really, really good for your gut, for your liver, for your kidney, for your entire digestive system. So we figured, if you are adding these to your drinks to make them taste better anyway, if you're drinking, bitters and soda throughout the day, or just adding them to your water bottle as a way to make water taste better and stay hydrated, why not add even more benefit to it than you would find in classic cocktail bitters today? So our ingredient list reads more like digestive bitters. It reads like digestive bitters and cocktail bitters, had a baby. These are not ingredients that you're going to find in your typical cocktail bitters. Um, a lot of the ingredients aren't necessarily there for flavor, but they do contribute their own unique flavor to our blend. So our bitters are inspired by classics. We make one called aromatic that's inspired by Angostura. We make a New Orleans style bitter that's inspired by Peychaud's. We make an orange bitter,
Yeah.
which is, of course, orange. So inspired by very classic flavor profiles. These taste like the bitters that you're going to find behind any bar, but with more digestive benefit, with more health benefits, and a unique flavor that comes from using some more medicinal ingredients. I wouldn't say they taste medicinal necessarily, but they do have an herbal bent to them. And they do have a very unique flavor because of the ingredients that we use.
Honestly, like, I'm absolutely amazing. I can't wait to try them. And like I said to you before we started this call, like, I've had so many people in the US that I've kind of interviewed and spoken to over the last year since launching the podcast, who just have raved about it. This is going to be like asking which is your favorite child, but which is your favorite bitters?
Absolutely impossible to answer. I'm going to take a cop out, and I'm going to say a flavor that we haven't released yet,
Ooh.
um, which is an herbal blend. We're calling it Herb Garden. And it's mint, sage, rosemary, and eucalyptus, but it's also got some ingredients for focus and cognitive function. So we're using ginkgo biloba in there and an herb called gotu kola. And then those herbs themselves, the rosemary and sage and mint, are also good for focus. So the idea was to create something that would be enjoyable during the day, something that we could, drink in our water throughout the day and would help us focus. But we were absolutely shocked when we just added it to regular still water. It made it taste exactly like spa water, like the
Wow.
cucumber and lemon and mint and whatever. It was like it's the most refreshing water addition I've ever had, and we made 10 little test batches, and we bottled probably, I don't know, six of them or so for us to drink here. We went through it in like a week. The five of us that work here finished six bottles of cocktail bitters in a week. We drank a bottle a day, literally just mixed with still water, not even soda, not a cocktail, just mixed with still water. Completely addicted, blew through it in a week. We weren't actually planning on releasing it until, I don't know, sometime like late next year as part of our experimental series. Don't hold me to this if this doesn't happen. I'm sorry, but we're now looking at bumping it up, and adding it to the main lineup, sooner rather than later, because we need it, like, selfishly we need to have it in production. I want to
Yeah.
share it with people too, but honestly, mostly it's for us. It's so that we
Oh,
have a steady supply of it and don't just have to make like little batches for ourselves.
sounds amazing. I can't wait to try it. And as a water drinker, that just to me sounds perfect. I yeah, absolutely can't wait to try it. And I wanted to talk a little bit about like crafting alcohol-free magic at home. So what are some of the essential tips or techniques that you can share for creating just really incredible alcohol-free cocktails at home?
It's interesting. The space has come a long way in the last couple of years, but I think what's evolved even more is our ability as people who make drinks to start breaking the rules a little more and to start thinking outside the box a little more with the tools that we already have.
Yeah.
So, 3 years ago, 4 years ago or so, I spent, God, I don't know, I spent weeks trying to make a good old fashioned. I thought this is a classic drink. Every brand that makes a whiskey puts out an old fashioned recipe. Every single one of them. They've all got an old fashioned recipe. We do too. So I spent weeks trying to figure out how to make it good, and I couldn't do it. An old fashioned is whiskey, sugar, and bitters. That's it. There are some great whiskey alternatives on the market, but none of them, and the producers themselves will tell you this. I'm not knocking anybody. They're not meant to be drunk alone. Non-alcoholic spirits, you can't remove 40% alcohol and then expect a non-alcoholic whiskey to hit the same way that a 40 to 45% bourbon does. You're not going to drink it straight. It doesn't work in a glass on its own with an ice cube. It's not enjoyable. They make great cocktails. Take that whiskey and make a whiskey sour with it, and it works because you're adding lemon juice, you're adding sugar, maybe use some egg white for texture. You're building onto that drink. You're layering that drink. A margarita with non-alcoholic tequila works for the same reason. Works beautifully because lime juice and sugar on its own is delicious. Lime juice and sugar is tasty. It hits your palate in all the right ways. Add some soda to it, you make it refreshing. That drink on its own is great. And so then you add non-alcoholic tequila to it. You add the tequila flavor, and suddenly it drinks exactly like a margarita. There's no mistaking it.
Mm.
But spirit forward cocktails, on the other hand, are a challenge because you're not going to drink that same tequila neat. You're not going to drink that whiskey neat. So I spent weeks trying different syrups, different, thickeners, all kinds of different things to like make a classic old fashioned. And at the time, I landed on maple syrup as being a good addition. It added the right amount of sweetness, but it also added texture. It added, a nice element of flavor. And we've been, kind of using that recipe for a while. Still, that again next to like a non-alcoholic margarita, no contest. The margarita is hands down the more satisfying drink. What has really changed things for me, and this is how I would look at making drinks at home, is you don't have to give up the classic formats. You don't have to give up the classic drinks. Classics are classics for a reason. We've been drinking them for hundreds of years for good reason. You don't necessarily need to change formats and throw everything out the window. But what I've been doing is combining either alcohol, traditional replacement spirits, so let's say something like a whiskey, with the unique spirits that are on the market, which generally are much more successful on their own because they're not trying to mimic a 40% alcohol whiskey, which is impossible. They're writing their own rules, they're creating their own flavor profile, they're able to add whatever they want to create a great experience on its own. So a couple of examples that are available here in the US. Um, Pathfinder is an Amaro. It's not an Amaro, but it's like an Amaro that is incredible on its own. It's viscous, it's bittersweet, it's herbal, it's enjoyable on ice. Pathfinder is incredibly enjoyable on its own. So if you take a non-alcoholic Manhattan recipe with whiskey and vermouth, it's not great, to be honest. If you
Mm.
swap out that vermouth for Pathfinder and make a black Manhattan, which is a Manhattan made with Amaro, it's a fantastic drink because Pathfinder is so intense that it makes the entire drink work. The whiskey works great in telling you that it's whiskey. Those oak flavors, those bourbon flavors, the corn, the caramel, the vanilla, the butterscotch, those flavors all work really well in telling your brain that this is a whiskey cocktail. But the intensity of Pathfinder makes the drink work on its own. Three Spirit Nightcap is another really great example. Nightcap is great on its own. It's spicy, it's woody, it's botanical, it's really interesting, and it's enjoyable on its own. Break the rules. Make an old fashioned with Nightcap. Combine whiskey, non alcoholic whiskey, add some Nightcap to it, throw in a little bit of cinnamon syrup rather than your traditional simple syrup. Use a couple extra dashes of bitters. That drink is absolutely fantastic. I served an old fashioned made that way at a wine event last week. 500 people that were there all to drink wine. Nobody was there for non-alcoholic drinks. I'm there serving a non-alc old fashioned, and everybody loved it. 500 people all were blown away by this drink. I couldn't have made that 3 years ago because I didn't occur to me to use these really interesting spirits to really bolster and make spirit forward cocktails work. So I love and I'm seeing more people do this and it's encouraging. I think that there's a place. We're getting kind of philosophical now. There's a place for the traditional spirit replacements, and there's folks who really like that. They like the comfort of a non-alc gin, tequila, whiskey, etc. They have a place, and they're absolutely valid. There's also a place and a growing space for the unique spirits that are creating new experiences. There's nothing to compare it to, so there's nothing to be let down by because it's a unique experience. They both have their place. They both work really well together in the same way that liqueurs and aperitifs work in a bar program alongside gin, whiskey, and tequila. The traditional spirits bring that flavor that you expect. So you smell it and taste it and you go, oh, that's a whiskey drink. That's a tequila drink. But then you layer on these unique spirits that create a new taste sensation. And then your brain goes, huh, what's that? I don't know what that is. That's a new flavor. I really like it. It's familiar and it's new. And they really help to make non-alcoholic cocktails work.
Yeah, that's such incredible advice. Like, I'm not a bartender at all. I worked in bars when I was at uni, but and I think I've been quite traditional when I make cocktails at home. Yes, I might make an alcohol-free daiquiri and I'll use rum and I tried mixing some, making martinis, and just couldn't. It just wasn't happening. But actually being able to kind of mix the more traditional non-alc alternatives with the newer kind of botanicals and things that are a little bit different and not trying to copy something else is great advice. Like I honestly hadn't really thought to pair the two. And then, yeah, thrown in some bitters as well.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm excited actually. You've just made me feel really inspired to go and play with some of the ones I've got, you know.
It's fun, and to remember that there really are. I said don't throw out the rule book, and that's true, but at the same time there are no rules. Mix whatever you want together, experiment, play around, figure it out, layer different things together and see what happens.
I love that. Such good advice. And you mentioned a couple of your favorites there. Have you got any other non-alc alternatives that you absolutely love, and that complement bitters or work well on their own?
I think the highlights I mentioned Pathfinder and Three Spirit. Tennyson is one that's up there for me. It's another unique, dark botanical spirit. It's bitter, it's tart, it's really interesting, and again, it mixes really well with the other dark non-alc, unique and traditional spirits. I really like Martini Floreal. Martini and Rossi make
Yeah.
two aperitifs. Their Vibrante, the red one, I think is great. But there's a lot of really, I think, very nice kind of vermouth alternatives. Roots Divino makes a really wonderful red vermouth and a Bianco vermouth. But the Martini Floreal is a chamomile flavored, kind of off dry. I don't know if they would call it a vermouth. It's an aperitif, but it's kind of an off dry vermouth alternative that has some chamomile flavor to it, which is really fantastic. And then Wilderton in Portland, Oregon. They're not in Portland. They're in Oregon. They are the United States' first fully non-alcoholic distillery. They also have a tasting room, which is lovely if you're ever in the area. It's worth the trip. They make a bittersweet aperitivo that hits me in all the right places. It is wildly bitter, aggressively bitter, and aggressively herbal. So it's kind of like Campari, and then it's bittersweet, but it's also very herbal. It's got a lot of rosemary. It's got a lot of different herbal characteristics to it that I personally really love. Um, Not everybody's cup of tea. It's a lot, but it's one of those things that's like totally unmistakable as being an adult beverage. It's a strong flavor. Gia is another one that I really really like. Gia makes a really wonderful kind of Mediterranean inspired aperitif that isn't really like anything else. It's not trying to be Campari. It's not trying to be anything else. But it's also very bitter. It's got some fruity characteristics to it, but it's not sweet at all. It's bitter. It's dry. It's high acid. It's herbal. It's deceptively intense because it's like bright pink. You think that it's going to be this like sweet juice bomb, and then it's a very grown up flavor, delicious on its own, and really easy to mix with.
Oh my God. Right. So there's a bunch there that I haven't actually heard of. So I'm going to go away and do some research, see what I can get over here in Singapore. Yeah, amazing. Thank you so much. And thank you so much for just the advice and your time today. I have just loved hearing your story. It's so inspiring. And the brand that you have created out of that journey is just wonderful. You should be
Thank you.
so proud.
It's been incredible. It's been a really amazing couple of years, and to be able to do this and to create something that helps people drink better, whether they're drinking alcohol or not. You can use our bitters in alcoholic drinks. You can use them in
Yeah.
NA drinks. You can add them to water. To be able to create a product with our hands from scratch that allows people to drink better, um, whatever that means for you, has been incredibly rewarding.
Yeah. Oh, amazing. Um, Really, thank you so much for your time and sharing your journey and your insights. It really is inspiring. And I know that all of our listeners are going to be buzzing with ideas to create their own alcohol-free magic now for all of our listeners, please check out All the Bitter online and explore all the range, and keep your eye out for any new ones coming. And I'll link to the website and all the social media handles below. If you enjoyed this episode, then please hit the subscribe button, leave us a review. Your support means so much to us. It's still really early days, and honestly, I'm just trying to reach as many people as I can, and learn and listen and learn from my amazing guests. And yeah, so please, if you can, share this episode with anyone who might be interested in mindful drinking or crafting delicious non-alcoholic cocktails. Thank you again, Ian, and thanks to everyone else. I'll see you soon. Bye.